So here we are with another episode of Keeping Up with Data podcast. Sean Gray from Precision here, and we are joined by a very special guest today that has been a long time in the making. Want to give yourself an introduction to the listeners, Fran?
Yeah, it's taken some time to get here, but I'm super excited. I am François van Heerden. I am the head of data and analytics at a Montu group of companies, which includes Alternaleaf.
Welcome to Keeping Up with Data. Keeping Up with Data is the podcast that keeps data enthusiasts up to speed with what is happening in the data world. We bring in the leading minds from the data industry to talk all things career, news, embarrassing stories, failures and successes.
Nice one. So we've got an awful lot to get through. I think this podcast has been in the making since maybe February 2023.
Has it been that long? Wow.
Life has gotten in the way, things have gotten in the way. Obviously, Montu have grown exponentially since then. So we'll get all through the journey, but I think we'll kind of reel it back to where it all started. Obviously, you're from South Africa and made the move over to Australia. So fill us in. I think you mentioned before this that you'd moved across at possibly the worst time anybody could have ever emigrated anywhere in the world.
I did.
So South Africa, what were you up to in South Africa? Fill me in from kind of your journey into data.
So I guess my story is actually a story about someone that should actually not be working in tech, to be honest. I am formally trained as an economist. And I managed to convince some people at some point that I have enough skills around data that I can pivot into e-commerce and digital. And so basically my journey has been quite interesting. And actually when I noticed that I wanted to work in technology I was working as an economist on a project with Uber in Cape Town. And we were working on launching Uber Assist as a service, which is quite a kind of a niche service. And what I noticed quite quickly was the approach around tech that excited me the most was we had an idea we could pilot, and then we could see in real time all of this data flowing and information coming back. So we could validate that it was working. And then we could just scale that as soon as we noticed that it was working. And I said, I need to work in tech, but I have no skills. I have no technical skills. I'm not a software engineer. I had no skills in kind of the digital space or e-commerce. So actually what I did was I started an online business. So I was selling coffee online so I could learn how to build a website, get tracking going, understand how to advertise online, all of those types of concepts. And then I remember my first job in tech, I managed to get an interview at a really big kind of retailer in South Africa. And I was lucky because the technical test that they made me do was actually one on paper. It wasn't actually build something. It was do the math on a piece of paper in the interview. And it was so frightening to actually do that. They get their head of quants in and they make you do the math on paper. And I managed to kind of get the job. I was quite lucky. And then I was introduced to all these new concepts in tech, like user behavior and customer journeys. And I worked on a big initiative to actually transform or digitize this big retailer in South Africa in their e-commerce team. So that was kind of the beginning for me in the tech space. And then if you fast forward, all the skills that I've learned around being customer obsessed and kind of first principles in engineering, really talking about the why things are happening. And then also kind of transferring some of my economist skills, which is mostly around we assume rational behavior, and if that behavior doesn't happen, what actually was introduced in the environment to understand why users or customers are not behaving the way that we expect. And then I picked probably the worst time to move to a new continent, which was March 2020. So I'm not sure if people remember a little thing called COVID.
A little thing, eh?
Yeah, it was, and at that point in time, I think most people, it was kind of this mindset of we kind of don't know what it is, and we're just going to go about our lives. And then all of a sudden, borders get closed. So I landed in Sydney on a Sunday. Next Sunday, they close the borders, and all of a sudden you're kind of in this environment where it's lockdown. Businesses don't know what they want to do. So kind of my move here was probably harder than it should have been. And then if I reflect on what that means for kind of getting into the tech space in Australia as well. It was quite interesting because at that point, a lot of companies were quite careful about hiring new people. And that was across the board, especially people on skills visas and all of these types of things, right? Like being an expat in Australia. But luckily, over time, what happened was business, like e-commerce and digital businesses started booming. And it turns out that my skills kind of were relevant at that point in time because I spent a lot of time working on kind of e-commerce and digital problems, specifically in kind of the data science, data engineering space. And I actually decided to see if I could get a position. And this is actually where your colleague Joel was extremely helpful. I was networking and Joel helped me communicate my skills or my value to the market better, because I was assuming that I could just do it. It's the same language, similar culture than South Africa. And I assumed I could just send my CV somewhere and it'll be fine. But actually it turns out that my resume was too cartoonish, and Joel was nice enough to help me kind of structure the information in a way and also communicate in a way where I think the market could resonate a bit more. But I also decided to take steps down in terms of getting into the market. So I decided not to take a more senior kind of data type of role, but go into kind of more of a technical team lead type of role as well. And I said, I'm motivated enough to get in and start adding value as quickly as I could. And that turned out to be okay.
Yeah. Shout out to Joel.
Big shout out to Joel for helping me out.
Well, I think obviously interesting journey coming over, and probably would have looked a lot different if COVID didn't happen. I have a similar entry point into Australia when COVID happened, and obviously me in a recruitment world was panic central, because you found that as a job seeker quite difficult. Everybody was getting fired, people being quite cautious. So I think it was like a 6-month hiatus where nobody knew what the hell was going on. Everybody was just trying to keep the lights on. And then it turned around in a matter of months where it was like, right, we're hiring like wildfire. Yeah. So interesting how it all started from an economist background. Have you done any uni or university degrees in data science, engineering?
Nothing. Like I said before, I should actually not be working in tech, right? But it turns out if you're willing to learn and invest the time and be resilient, then you can actually work in tech if you want. Yeah. So, and like I said before, the kind of economist skill set is quite interesting because you do get exposure to statistics, which is quite useful in analytics and data science. And I guess if you are willing to learn how to do the technical things, the engineering principles as well, I think it's become easier to learn these things on your time. And also, if you can manage to convince a business to give you exposure to these types of projects, you can actually work yourself. I like to think of it working closer towards the compute or the technology. You can actually do that over time if you want to. And that's exactly what I did. It turns out that all the things that I learned in e-commerce also was quite relevant to healthcare technology as well. And that's where I am at the moment. So, and that was like quite an interesting journey because I worked at the Iconic before, which is obviously kind of a large e-commerce player in kind of more lifestyle fashion space. And then I received a call from Montu, which is the holding company of Alternaleaf. And they said, am I interested to work in the healthcare space and kind of solve problems and transfer some of the knowledge that I have in e-commerce and specifically around kind of data platforming and kind of data science in the space into the sector, which is really exciting.
So that kind of brings back two things as well. Obviously, you haven't got the degree in data science engineering. So that people take away is that you can, if you've got a passion, get into something if you just work hard at it. And then also, secondly, as a new entrant coming into Australia, you were like leading teams manager in South Africa, and you had to really pivot and think, okay, I'm not going to go for a high level. I'm going to take one step back to go 2 steps forward, which is definitely advice that a lot of people can take right now, because I would see it as well, whereby people come into the country, principals, like very senior people, they struggle because they're trying to go at the same level that they have been in their home country. So that is a kind of tip for people to take a step back for 1 step, or 2 step backs, 1 step forward type thing. But then the Iconic journey, obviously a lot of similarities with online e-commerce to where you are now, Alternaleaf, and the health tech space is booming. So it was probably a no-brainer for you to get in there. 101 questions to ask about it. Obviously, you guys, I think I noticed Alternaleaf were top 5 startups in 2023 across LinkedIn, FR Fast 50. So you guys have gone on an exponential growth since you've joined. Maybe take it back to the very start when you were approached by somebody in Montu Alternaleaf to join the business. What was your whole thought process around health tech, leaving the full retailer e-commerce style? Like, what attracted you to join these guys?
Yeah, I guess it's important to reflect on how I operate as well, or how I think of the world. And like back in the day when I started kind of wanting to go into e-commerce, it was actually kind of a challenger type of business model. It wasn't really the mainstream thing to do. So it probably wasn't the smartest play, but ultimately it paid off. And I think when I received the call and I reflected on kind of healthcare technology, I felt like this was an opportunity to use the skills that I've developed over the years to kind of shape an industry, help shape alternative kind of pathways in health technology. So I feel like I was, it's almost a question when you get the phone call, do you want to get on the rocket ship? It needs to be a hell yes. And I felt like it was a hell yes. And ever since, it's been quite easy for me to wake up every morning and go, okay, I'm working on a transformational business. And then also, I get to work on problems. And when I solve problems and when our team solve problems, these are for real humans and patients that want certain health outcomes, right? They have pain or they have anxiety, and we get it to solve these problems for them in the space, which is quite exciting as well. So if I think big picture, these things aren't obvious when you start, right? Like when I started about a year and a half ago, or not even 200 people in the organization, and I really bought into the ambition of the leadership and the kind of the motivation of the leadership and their kind of patient first mindset, the fact that they wanted to solve problems for patients. That was the obsession. That is the obsession. And we've actually managed to grow the business to I think it's more than 850 employees now.
Wow.
You mentioned some of the credentials. So we've managed to win the Deloitte Fast 50 twice in a row, which is no other company has managed to do this in tech. Not Atlassian, not Canva. No one has done this before. And then also, like, yes, we were ranked the top place to work by LinkedIn as well. So we've seen exponential growth. It's really exciting space to work in, and it's specifically around kind of the technology and data business units as well. We've had to kind of grow that because of our bespoke platforms to 200 people now across tech and data. So it's been quite the journey, and maybe that explains why I've been so busy and I couldn't get to the podcast until now.
I think it's obviously, what's that, 600 people in a year and a half is absolutely mental, which is, you've got a lot to live up to now, I suppose, with getting those awards and looking forward. But when you joined, what did your team look like? Obviously, you were brought in to kind of spearhead data and make it a thing in the business. What did your team look like then compared to now? Yeah,
I was data employee number 1. So that is just an absolutely terrifying but super exciting space to be in, right? Like when you join, and I think how I explain this to, because we have more than 40 kind of data and analytics professionals at Montu now. And when I kind of explain to them the story of when I joined, is like I felt like just a rubber duck in the middle of like this dark ocean, like not really knowing kind of which way to go. But ultimately, and obviously we've matured quite a bit in like the last year and a half. But what was amazing was that the leadership had this big appetite for data. So at that point, it was more kind of used as kind of an ad hoc thing when we have to make big decisions, but there was really an appetite to invest in the space. So we actually decided that this was going to be a part of the business and would be a core part of our success. So we've really invested in the space, and we've made sure that we've developed a fit for purpose data platform alongside our Alternaleaf platform for our patients. We've also made sure that we have the right functional teams that solve problems in data science and engineering, in storytelling, analytics as well. So our leaders can make good decisions. We can optimize services, and you can imagine for our patients being on a journey to have a certain health outcome. Because we have in-house built platforms, we make sure that our patients have a voice via the data as well. So we have all of this data flowing, and we've really made it easy to produce and consume data in the organization to reflect the journeys that these patients are on. And then we can feed all of this data back now as well, to start optimizing this. And you can imagine our clinic has more than 150,000 patients now, and it keeps growing. We're in Australia and the UK as well. And you can just imagine the challenges that you have with like a very large telehealth clinic. And we can really use all of this data that we are creating or producing and consuming to create better experiences for our patients. So we've gone from virtually no data, to close that off, to having data on almost anything and everything you can think of. On our platforms, and we have teams running A/B test experimenting, creating better experiences. We have all of this data flowing back into the journeys of our patients. We have people telling stories about data now. We have people thinking about the future and framing the future around the data as well. So it's really exciting. We've done a ton of work in a short amount of time, and we're really proud of what we've done.
Yeah, I think we've got a patient or two inside who avail the service, who've got some good things to say about it. But in terms of the team, obviously, like, that's data is obviously for business is important to everyone, regardless of the industry that you're in a sense. But for you guys, it's like there's so much that you can do with it.
Yeah.
What does the team look like now? Because you joined number one. How many people have you built that whole squad out to?
Yeah, so we have quite a number of teams. We have about 40 people, or kind of slightly more than 40. We have more people joining every week. We have functions from, I like to call it data enablement, which is kind of the platforming and kind of more engineering kind of problems that we solve in data. Then we also have data science or decision science type of initiatives, and we have a specific team working on kind of your ML engineering type of problems, and also kind of data science problems, which is kind of more the experimentation, discovery, kind of learning pieces. Then we also have analytics, which has a number of teams embedded across the organization, and they work on storytelling, observability, strategy, and insights as well. And we've done this specifically so we can go really deep on the data. So we have quite a big push on enablement to make it as easy as possible for anyone in the organization to get access to the data. But then we have people executing on it as well, like the analysts and the data scientists as well, to really drive that value for our patients.
Yeah, I suppose you can't talk data science, AI, ML without throwing the AI word in there.
As any kind of good organization, these days we have to consider and invest in the space, and we definitely are. And you can imagine, like I said before, like with a large clinic with more than 150,000 patients and growing, you firstly have this challenge with constraints around medical practitioners, right? You only have a limited number of doctors available at any point in time, and you have to start working on optimizations there. And they have quite a large admin burden. So there's two things you can work on there. The one is, for example, you have a scheduling problem where you are basically indexing doctors' availability against demand of consultations from a large patient cohort. So what we actually did is we actually built some real-time data tooling where the clinical staff can help manage or help the indexing of these practitioners to maximize the utilization of their availability, right? So there's a constraint on the number of doctors you can have at any point in time. So we've actually have an example where specifically for new patients, we managed to reduce their wait time by more than 70% by helping the clinic re-index the availability of doctors. So the patients can get the outcomes that they want, right? So that, I guess, is maybe not an AI example, but again, like the definition of AI, it's quite a broad kind of statement. And then I would say, like, there's intelligence applied, then maybe that's artificial intelligence. But then also you can imagine kind of the admin burden that exists on medical practitioners as well. I'm not sure if you've obviously been at a GP and you can see they have to take notes, you have to fill in forms, there's a conversation that happens, and then notes goes into a system, and then doctors see a number of patients during the day, during the week, during a month, which could be a large number of patients. How do they keep track of all of this information? How do they get the right information to provide a high quality service, to have good clinical judgment when they need to? And I believe that us investing in the ability to, for example, help with note-taking, summarization, providing intelligence around some of the information or the history of patients to doctors would help kind of provide better quality care for our patients as well. So there are some examples of where we definitely see investment going into the space to ultimately help our patients have better quality care.
Yeah. I think you guys have streamlined a few different services as well to make sure that patients aren't without their medicine for a number of days. Obviously, that's important for people to have what they need. Well, what I think Shopify has been integrated in to help you guys. What's the benefit of that, I suppose, and how's that going to change things?
Yeah, so our GM of technology, Miles Lauder, he actually realized quite early when he started. He was like tech employee number one.
He's an Irish guy, isn't he?
Irish guy, yes. And he actually noticed that we were trying to solve these kind of e-commerce problems that are already solved for, right? Like someone wants to pay for something, check out. And we needed to be thoughtful about this as well, especially the space that we work in, alternative medicine. We needed to reflect trust in this journey. So he actually spent about 18 months negotiating with these providers because they didn't know how to deal with us, actually, to get Stripe in and Shopify in. So you can imagine that creates like a seamless process and a trusted process for patients.
What do you think has been the main, I suppose, attributes to the success over like the awards you've got in the last 2 years? It's been phenomenal, the growth. What do you think have been the main attributes to getting to where you guys are today?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think it's been the culture. And a part of our culture is, number one, being patient first or patient obsessed. And that's been extremely helpful. Obviously, we really zoom in on the problems we want to solve for our patients. And we also advocate for them in many kind of different ways. And then also being more of a startup. The benefit of that was in our culture is that we have a bias for action. That means that we like to execute. We like to deliver these things to market as well. And we like to do that really quickly. And I think that's been quite key. And it sounds obvious, but ultimately, in terms of actually executing this culture and maintaining this culture in a scaling organization requires a lot of resolve from leadership, right? To maintain that, going from, let's say, 150, 200 people to 800 people or 900 people in a short amount of time, maintaining that culture can be quite challenging. And I think that's been quite key to our success, just maintaining the patient first attitude and then also executing, getting stuff to market for them, getting the solution to market and solving the problems for them quickly.
Yeah, you're based in Adelaide as well, so I think you guys are dotted around. We're in Sydney today, so you've flown up. Well, I won't say specifically for this podcast, but
you can if you want.
Thanks for coming up. But obviously, how do you kind of maintain as a leader in your business the culture, make sure everybody's working as part of a team, and like being in Adelaide, you've got people in Brisbane, you've got people all over Australia, really. I think from what I believe. But how do you maintain such a good culture if like the separation? Do you find the separation anxiety showing with your team?
I know this is quite topical, right? Like remote versus being in the office. I don't know, Amazon made some announcements recently, right? So this is quite topical. And I think we're a fully remote business. We have more than 800 employees that are all distributed, right? We have people in Melbourne, we have people in Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane. We even have Byron Bay. We even have Gold Coast, we have Sydney, we have everywhere. Any place you can think of. This was actually quite important for us. So firstly, maintaining culture is one thing, but also the ability to access talent rapidly and get them onboarded. Being a remote business was quite key to that as well. We didn't limit ourselves in kind of saying, okay, only Melbourne, only Sydney, only. And that would have slowed us down because ultimately we required a workforce to help us solve problems for our patients. So that was, we didn't have that limiting factor. We could actually scale quite quickly. But also what we do is we're quite honest about the fact that we are a remote business. I've seen many companies say that they are a hybrid business, but actually they index more towards in office. And then if someone's remote, they kind of get left out of kind of the culture and the way of working. Where us being a remote business, we know we're remote and we have to do things to engage, make sure that we have good engagement and maintain good culture. So what we do is we actually give people access to shared office spaces in all kind of the major cities, which means if you want to do a workshop a specific problem, or just kind of be around colleagues for a day a week, you get access to kind of an in-person setting. And also we do events to obviously get large groups of people together in the different major cities as well. So we do invest in making sure that people can see each other face to face as well. We believe that it can be important and it has its place. But also what I think in terms to get back to the original question, which is how do you maintain culture in a remote organization? I guess what I've tried to do specifically in data is make it absolutely clear what we are working towards. So it doesn't really matter if someone doesn't see me this week. They have my voice in their head saying like, I know this is the way forward, right? And ultimately, culture beats strategy every day of the week, in my opinion. Yeah. So we've made sure that we handpick people as well. Like we make sure that people are a good culture fit, that they kind of bring all of these values are quite natural to most people that join Montu. We do our best to make sure that happens. But then also we do our best to provide clarity in terms of the direction, where are we going, so people can hold on to something. So it doesn't matter if their manager doesn't see them or they don't actually physically sit next to them. They know I am working towards this goal, and I can chase that. I can solve that problem for a patient.
Yeah. I think it's funny you mentioned around the Amazon and the hybrid style work, because it's like, yeah, we're a hybrid business. You get 5 days in the office and 2 from home. 2 from home are Saturday and Sunday. It's like, yeah, that doesn't work. But yeah, boiling back to that, like obviously for me and for anybody who's joining a new company, you don't want to just come in.
Yeah.
There's different industries, different things, but you want to be part of something where everybody's invested. Everybody's like, let's look forward. What are we doing? Where are we going? And kind of has that momentum. So it's like you can put trust in your employees that they're not just bought in on you, they're bought in on the vision, the tech, where you guys are going. And I suppose touching on that, where you guys are going, like the next couple of years, obviously growth is still number one at the forefront of you guys' mind. Do you foresee like shop fronts? Like there's so many questions that I could think about where you guys could implement in like visual customer, like brick and mortar style business operations. Do you guys have any of that planned? Where do you see you guys operating in the next?
I think we specifically work in the telehealth space, right? And we find that our digital experiences are some of the best, or maybe the best in the space, right? So we definitely don't see ourselves moving out of it, and we still think there is a significant amount of growth in the space. So we will maintain kind of this kind of healthcare technology in a kind of a digital way. And if you can just imagine, like, again, to the journey of a patient, we're making it really easy for a patient to know by doing a pre-screening, do they, generally qualify for an alternative pathway. We give them access to telehealth consultations. They have patient portal. They also have access to follow-up care to maintain a digital way, and they don't actually have to leave their house. There's no travel required to actually do this. The requirement would be in a physical location that they would have to potentially, especially if they're in rural Australia, they would have to travel for hours somewhere or organize transport somewhere. And then we've actually built a bespoke platform to actually service this and optimize this over time. So we really kind of see this. We're doubling down obviously on this digital play, and it definitely works for our patients.
Yeah. With the telehealth consultations as well, obviously that's human to human interaction.
Yes. Yep.
There's been a couple of people who've like leveraged on us internally in the recruitment world for like, I don't even know what to call them. We'll steer clear of the dreaded AI word, but there's the bots who like you communicate, there's like interview processes where you communicate with not a real person. Do you guys envision at this scale, do you think you'll have someone able to do the monotonous bits as like you're talking to a bot, shall we call it, who can do automation, note taking, and give that screening without having to have so many select doctors available at one time. For example, if you've got a backlog of 1,000 patients, this is just pure hypothetical. Yeah. You've got 1,000 patients, you've got 40 doctors. They can't service every single one of them one after another because it's too busy. Do you think there'll be implementations of bots to leverage the demand in the future? Or?
Yeah, I know. Like people typically kind of head towards bots because of ChatGPT and some of the examples we've seen. But ultimately, we're actually dealing with quite complicated kind of ethical and legal challenges in that space. Like just to actually, like quite simply, a bot cannot register to become a doctor. Right? Like in quite basic terms. Where I do see it adding value though is, and also like if you just think of a patient again, like again, first principles, why, and also if you think of the patient and what they're going through, like would you, if you're in pain or you have anxiety, would you? I potentially would feel relatively annoyed if I'm getting I'm doing a consult with a bot, right? You actually you want to talk to a health professional that can provide high quality care in that case. Where I really see it going though is like I think I mentioned before is I see us helping amplify what doctors can do and what nurses can do. And what I mean by that is they kind of the admin burden is quite high on these professionals. And what we really want to help them with is kind of remove that burden and kind of help them focus more on the health outcome, the treatment plan, the clinical judgment. That's really what they should be working on. I don't want to make any bold statements, but you could automate kind of transcriptions, the ability to kind of capture information in a consultation, and then you can help surface the right information to a doctor as well, given the high demand for their skills. Where they don't have to sit and tippy type things anymore, right? Like I think that's more where it's heading, rather than thinking that you are talking to some sort of avatar or a bot. Again, just like reflect on. So if you were interviewing somewhere, and the signal that company is giving, in my opinion, is that I do not care enough about you and your interview to be there in person. You can talk to a bot. I'm not sure that makes me feel quite motivated to work at that organization, right? I'm not actually meeting a person. So again, I do see these technologies being quite powerful in really specific ways over time. But I think the assumption is that there's some sort of silver bullet on this stuff and we'll have like Jarvis, like from Iron Man soon. But
avatars floating around.
I don't think so. I'm more practical. Again, from that point of view, in terms of what does the patient need, what is the best for them, and how should we be solving problems for them.
No, I fully agree. I'm glad we're on the same page. Glad we're on the same page with that, because I've got a vendetta for those type of things that are coming in. It's like even the customer service, when you're calling customer services and you're dealing with not a human, it's like, I can't even get through to anybody. I'm just speaking to a robot. Well, I suppose then looking forward, like for you and your team, if like, let's talk tech, because that's what attracts a lot of people there. Like I've got a couple of questions before we wrap up. So one will be the tech, what you guys are using from a cloud platform and like how you streamline your services. And then maybe two, why would someone want to come and join you guys and work on your team? If there is that growth period coming, what would you say to people to attract people into your journey?
Yeah, okay. So like first question, platform. So we've implemented modern data stack, which I would argue is potentially less building more assembly these days. Like, are you good at buying software? And we have a hybrid platform at the moment, which is across Google Cloud Platform and AWS. And we started kind of incorporating shift left, which is more of a data exchange type of architecture where you can start enforcing contracts and kind of develop clear ownership of data as well. And then on the GCP side, especially because we're a Google shop as well. And then we have frameworks on top of that to obviously kind of curate and transform and provide semantics of the data. So we use a combination of DBT, data building tool. We use DBT core. And then also our engineers have built tooling around this. So we obviously have all the kind of best practice in mind when it comes to developer principles. And then also we have a headless semantic platform, the Looker enterprise platform. So we can build our semantics kind of decoupled from the actual visualization of the data as well. And that's quite useful because you can imagine, like, as I discussed, we want to actually have data flow back into journeys of patient, but then also into process. So we want to kind of infuse that in places. And then also we have examples of where we use Vertex. And there's a number of kind of managed services around Vertex, and we've been working with Google Cloud Platform to make sure that those services maintain data sovereignty and all of these things in Australia. They actually deployed some of these services, including an LLM for us locally.
So you do have AI tools embedded.
So yes, but like I said, I'm quite practical about how we use these things.
Yeah.
An example would be, I find LLMs quite useful. Back in the day when you worked on NLP problems, they were an absolute nightmare. It's so labor intensive, labeling, tagging, working on sentiment, all of these things where LLMs are quite powerful in a data transformation pipeline, for example. So yeah, that's kind of, I might have missed some things and my team might hate me for not talking about all the things, but so Google Shop, we have a number of initiatives running in that space. And then the second part is like, why would someone want to work in data analytics?
The big question, drum roll.
The big question, let's do a drum roll. Is for me, and I mentioned this before, I guess, is when I wake up in the morning, it is absolutely clear to me that we are changing the way that healthcare works, right? Like, and this is not just like, I think, an Australian thing. I think this is a global thing where we're kind of reimagining healthcare. And from a data point of view, what's quite amazing is we've actually managed to attract some of the smartest and most motivated data professionals in Australia. And I feel so blessed working with all of them because I learn new things from them every single day. Yeah. I'm by no means an expert on all things, right? I just, for some reason, know how to find smart people and convince them to work with me. So that's like opportunity number one, is you get to work with these amazing people, and they've worked in startups before, in a big tech before. So you don't just get to work with, if you're an analyst, you get to work with engineers, with data scientists, with software engineers developing features, with product managers. You kind of get to kind of work in a cross-functional way across the board, which is quite exciting. Also, like I said, we're a fully remote business, and we have a ton of flexibility, and we understand that there's balance in terms of work, home, family, lifestyle, all of these things as well. So I think that's quite nice. And then also, like I said, we are honest about the fact that we're remote first, and we provide opportunity for people to see each other in person as well. So you get access to hubs as well. So I think it's a very exciting space. We're still growing. There's many different roles available at Montu group of companies across the board, including Alternaleaf. And also, what also like maybe finally is, even, look, I'm a data nerd, but you don't have to be a data nerd to work with Alternaleaf, right? There's many other things you could do there. And ultimately, you are solving problems for real people, real patients, and they are living better lives because of that. Like hundreds of thousands of patients, actual people, will be able to live a normal life because they can manage their pain or their anxiety. And that's quite a motivating thing to work on. And this includes solving data and technology problems in a healthcare setting, which is also quite new and exciting for a lot of data people. If you've worked potentially in pharmaceuticals or healthcare before, maybe some of these things were harder to do, where now, because we're reimagining, we can actually lead the way in terms of what technology should look like in the space as well. Yeah, that's my long and short pitch.
I think the one that sticks out for me is you're solving real world problems for actual people. Yeah. It's like not digging banks, not digging any other industries. But when I first started recruitment, that was always what I thought was the cool thing about data technology. It's like, yeah, you can work in a bank and you can build these dashboards, or you can understand customer behavior and why they spend X on this and that. It's not you're not solving someone's actual problem. Whereas with you guys, it's like the end user, you're actually physically helping people with their like problems that they have from a medical background. So it's like, changing the world for the good.
Yeah,
which I think is
exactly.
the best about it all.
Exactly.
But I think that's we've got a bit of a wrap now. Excellent.
Awesome.
Legend.
Nice one.
Lovely.
That was so much fun.
So something really important for us here at Precision Sourcing is mental health. It's something we've been focused on a lot over the last year or so. And we're lucky enough to have partnered with the Black Dog Institute. And we're going to be doing a lot of events with them this year. A lot of our events, money will be going towards them. And they're out there aiming to create a mentally healthier world for everyone. So if you wish to support the cause, please donate via the link in the bio on this podcast. And you'll be seeing a lot more information about Black Dog over the next year.